Okay, I'd like to resume the strategic planning session for today. Up next is bringing innovation and improvement to the boards and commissions appointment process. We now have a presentation by Megan Ahearn and Michelle Braza Deming.
And Madam Chair, just by way of introduction of this item too, a little bit of a prelude. I just wanted to mention the City Council approved hiring a position to improve the board and commission administration, everything from training to recruitment to retention and so on. And our boards and commissions are so important to us. We have really a couple hundred volunteers. They're not all on boards and commissions, but volunteers really drive our organization. They help our day-to-day inner workings of the organization, and they're incredibly valuable. So we're appreciative that we have a position now solely focused on improving innovation with the boards and commissions, and Megan's going to lead us through that. And I think you're going to be impressed with the progress that we're making to date. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to present an update on the Boards and Commissions project. Before we get into all of the exciting new initiatives we have been working on, I thought it would be good to review the reason for this important update. Our boards and commissions play a vital role in the organization. For instance, our Planning Commission is responsible for reviewing development plans throughout the city. They are the first line of defense in assuring new development projects are in line with the city's master land use plan, as well as the Visioning 2030 statement and guiding principles. The Board of Ordinance Appeals works with the Code Enforcement Department to preserve property values and keep the city looking vibrant by enforcing property maintenance standards. Here's an example of a residential and commercial nuisance abatement that went through the Board of Ordinance Appeals. So these are the before pictures. That's the after nuisance abatement. The Ethnic Community Committee serves as a forum for dealing with issues and concerns of the ethnic community in Sterling Heights. Additionally, they introduce an assortment of programs to promote the city's diversity, such as the annual cultural exchange, naturalization ceremony, participating in the annual Memorial Day Parade, and awarding annual diversity awards. Our 28 boards and commissions include over 200 volunteers. This fact, coupled with these examples of community influence, begin to paint the picture of why our boards and commissions are invaluable to the city's daily operations. Therefore, it is necessary that we take the proper steps to ensure the boards and commissions program is thoroughly reviewed and updated to reflect its importance in our community. While we have a good base structure for our current boards and commissions program, it is in need of organization and centralization. The flaws of the current program can be summed up as such. We have a disjointed process. There's too many staff members that are in charge of separate pieces, and we don't have a centralized contact for boards and commissions. We have a lengthy application and a dated database software. Our website requires manual updates. We have limited member orientation training. We have limited marketing and recruitment efforts. With the City Council's approval of the 2021-22 fiscal year budget, two very important items were funded for this project. The first is the funding of a part-time management services specialist hired specifically for the purpose of updating the boards and commissions program. The second item is the new on-base boards and commissions software. Unfortunately, our new boards and commissions management services specialist, Michelle Braza Deming, could not be here today, so I'm going to present her portion. Moving forward, we have many solutions we have begun working on to address the concerns we have for the current program. To address the disjointed process, we have centralized the boards and commissions program to Michelle and I. We have met with each individual liaison to discuss their ideas and concerns with the current program and receive feedback about an updated handbook and new orientation process. We will be testing our new orientation program on our liaisons in the next month or so. The next item being addressed is the lengthy application and outdated database storage process. Michelle and I have been collaborating with Applied Imaging to get the new on-base boards and commission software developed and running. Thus far, the application process has been significantly shortened and streamlined. Additionally, all new applicant information will be automatically uploaded into OnBase as opposed to the current process, which requires saving the same information in several different formats across many different folders. We are currently in the testing phase and anticipate going live with the new software by mid-February. Another current concern is the website requires manual updates when members resign and new members are appointed. Unfortunately, because there are so many other places this information needs to be updated, the website sometimes is forgotten and therefore outdated information remains. The next step in the software, once this database is established, will be to integrate the software with our website, creating a streamlined process and ensuring the website is always up to date. One of the bigger concerns we're addressing with creating a Boards and Commissions orientation program. We do not currently have an organized orientation program. New members are notified that they have been appointed and they must come in to take their oath of office, and then some are contacted by their board liaison to provide them with packet information about their particular board. It's typically very brief and informal. Our new orientation program that Michelle and I have developed will be more organized and will be twofold, with a focus on both teaching everyone the basics that span all of the boards, as well as providing specific board information to new members. A refresher training orientation will be held once a year in the summer when many board seats go through a reappointment process. This orientation will be used to give members their oath of office, go over general board member information, and provide updates on any changes that have been made. The second type of orientation will be for brand new members and include the presence of a liaison for a more personalized training experience. The new member will take their oath of office and the same general information will be covered. However, it will be a more in-depth discussion with relation to the specific board they have been appointed to, and they will become acquainted with their board liaison. Additionally, they will have the opportunity to have any question they have answered prior to their first meeting. The new orientation program will help new members gain a better understanding of their role and the purpose of their board or commission. They will become ambassadors to promote their board and encourage others to apply, and it will help them feel valued and appreciated. To go hand in hand with the orientation program, we have also updated the Boards and Commissions Handbook. The old book is about 15 years old, and in recent years, we haven't even been supplying them to our new members because it's been so outdated. In the update, we included information that applies to all boards. We removed content that was outdated and sometimes a little too specific, and we condensed it to make it more user-friendly. We anticipate the book being, it's being in the design process right now. We anticipate that will be done by end of February. And then the final initiative that we have been working on over the next month or so, we will be building a recruitment campaign. Currently, we post on social media from time to time when we are trying to recruit for a specific board. For example, the Community Alliance that was recently formed was heavily publicized on Facebook and other sites to encourage residents to apply. Although targeting specific boards is helpful, we also need a broad recruitment plan to help gain interest in all of our boards and commissions from every community within Sterling Heights. Our new recruitment efforts will rely on the city website and publications such as the magazine, setting up a table at community events, digital marketing, social media, community outreach groups, and current member testimonials, such as the following video.
My name is Miriam Abutala.
I'm Maximilian Stefanski.
My name is Diane Bledsoe.
I am Nathan Ames. I'm Ricardo Harris.
I'm Richard Ruba.
My name is Ayada Yad.
I am Brenda Wilson.
I am a member of the Youth Advisory Board.
Youth Advisory Board.
I serve on the Community Alliance.
Community Alliance.
The Sustainability Commission.
The Sterling Heights African American Coalition.
The African American.
African American Coalition.
Well, our team is a new charter, and we've been put together, there's 7 of us, to really kind of look at the whole city in ways that we can, foster environments for education, foster environments for situations that we can bring folks together, bring the community together to learn about each other's differences and celebrate those differences, as well as maybe even have harder conversations.
We went through and in 2020 adopted a comprehensive sustainability plan that addresses a number of different goals and areas that we would like to see the city accomplish. Different items regarding sustainability involving natural assets, sustainable mobility, and sustainable land use and development.
Our board looks at issues which the youth gets impacted on in our community, and those issues we try to solve or try to fix as any way we can, because we are also youth, so we kind of listen to our peers and see what their problems are. We kind of talk about them to try to help them out.
We're interested in making sure that we're represented in City Hall, that we're represented in the city, that we participate in the elections, that we come to the council meetings if there's needs in the community for change, and to feel as if we're part of the group.
We try and come up with ideas to make Sterling Heights an inclusive, more diverse community. And it's more than just ethnicity. It's about culture, it's about the LGBTQ community, it's about Americans with disabilities, whether they're learning or physical disabilities. So it encompasses all of those different facets of our community. And Sterling Heights is now becoming a diverse community. And this helps us to help the citizens of Sterling Heights feel included in what's happening in the city.
If I can do my part, then hopefully some of that change will happen. And so I would just encourage anyone that sees things that are different blind spots, and we call them blind spots because we don't see them, right? And so I would just encourage anyone that has a passion for whatever it is to look, for those opportunities to get involved. The more you're involved, the more community that you're able to build, the more opportunity that you can maybe point out blind spots and use your strengths to better our community.
Personally, I just want to see getting our voices heard. I think a lot of our leaders are older, and getting the perspective of the younger audience is pretty important, and especially with some diversity.
I was very surprised how open and how willing the individuals from the city, the police chiefs, and some of the city council members that come to participate, the city manager, how open and the willingness they have to be open to our ideas and be receptive and actually take action on some of the recommendations that we've made. So I've been very impressed with that. I didn't anticipate that. I don't think a lot of residents anticipate that kind of openness from their city representatives. So I was very pleased to see that. And that's what keeps me in the organization, because I feel like they listen to what we have to say.
Yeah, it's a great feeling, when you see the work that you have put into something, and we spent dozens of hours working on a sustainability plan, and we're able to present that to City Council and get some feedback. It's great to see something that you put so much time into get a positive reception from City Council and City Administration, and we hope that it will ultimately get a good reception from the residents of the city as well.
We're all family, we're all neighbors, we're all friends, and we're all important in this group that makes this a great city. I want to participate in helping keep the city one of the best cities in the country to live in.
Helping to develop the city into a city that I continue to think would be a great city to live, work, and plan is something that I would like to do. And if people want to continue living in the city and help shape the city, getting involved in the different boards and commissions is a great way to do that.
I'm a person that's very passionate about diversity, very passionate about inclusion, and I also believe that the change that I want to see, it has to begin with me. So I just wanted to put my head out there and see if I could be of service to the city, and I was happy to be selected.
being part of a community, there's a certain role you should play, and getting voices heard from a younger audience is pretty hard. So I think this was a great way to do it.
It gives me an opportunity to give back to this community. I lived here for 25 years, raised my children here, have thought it to be a fantastic community. I want it to continue to be a fantastic community. And now I can have a small part in that, in the future of the city, and being on this committee. It's really a benefit to myself, and hopefully it'll be a benefit to the city as we move forward.
Volunteering for the Sterling Heights African American Coalition is not only showing up for you, but is showing up for your community and everyone who's around you. Without us being visible in this community, our voice is not heard or recognized. And thankfully and fortunately for us, Sterling Heights has recognized our voice and has recognized our lived experiences. So it is very important for us to utilize the platform that we are given to show up for each other.
If you want to affect change in the city or have input in any change going on in the city, joining a committee is the best way to do that.
Volunteer and participate in something that you truly believe in and that you care about, because that way you're going to bring the best of yourself to the organization.
The City of Sterling Heights has a great approach to getting the community involved. It's a very progressive city, wants to see people get involved and help shape their community, truly listens to resident input. I think my voice has been very well heard. Hey, I volunteer.
I volunteer.
I volunteer.
I volunteer.
I volunteer.
I volunteer for my community.
For my community.
For my community, and so should you.
And so should you.
And so should you.
And so should you.
That sounds like great. It's coming.
So I just wanted to briefly give a quick shout out to Dan Rizek and Bob Surgott in Community Relations for creating that awesome video, very limited time. So thank you guys, it was awesome. So these marketing and recruitment efforts are going to be implemented to create a greater community representation of diverse applicants while showcasing the value of the city's boards and commissions. So thank you again, and with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Ahern. Also would like to just say how phenomenal that video was, and kudos once again to Dan and Bob. Looking in the room, I see that we do have some liaisons to some of our boards and commissions. I know some of you may be speaking later, but at this point, is there anything that you folks would like to add, since you're right there in the trenches with our boards and commissions, before we start our discussion? No? Okay. Do we have any questions from the audience? Seeing none, I'll open it up to my colleagues on council. Council, any comments or questions? Mrs. Yarko?
I'll start. First of all, I have to agree with you, the video was phenomenal. I think we should use it as a marketing tool, and continue to play it, on our website. It was a great message. Certainly, we understand how important volunteers are for our community, but I thought it was a phenomenal job. I think the new commissions that we've added have certainly been doing a lot of work as far as organizing themselves and finding out what their mission's going to be. So I really do appreciate the input that they brought to us today. Anyway, but nothing further. But thank you so much, because it was great. It was a great piece.
Any other comments from council, questions? Mrs. Kosky?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. This is something that I have wanted to see for a long, long time. We needed some help with our boards and commissions, and Egan has done a fantastic job. I'm really, really, really pleased with what you've done, because now we're going to be able to move forward, get the message out to our residents, inviting them to become part of the volunteer group for the city of Sterling Heights to help us become a little bit better. Thank you.
Anyone else? I'd just like to make one comment about the orientation opportunities for new members of the board as well as returning members of the board. I think it's always a good thing to refresh ourselves on our roles and the procedures. So I'm really glad to see that there's actually going to be formal orientation once a year for all boards and commissions. So, okay, with that, we can move on. We do call for a break. However, without objection, we can skip the break and continue on to annual reports. Council? No objection. No objection? Okay. Then we will move on to item F, annual reports. Progress towards a better future. There will be presentations from a few of our boards and commissions. Well, maybe we do need to take a break. Okay, we'll take a break until 2 p.m. That's when they were scheduled to make their presentations. So with that, we will break until 2 p.m.
It's a good idea. Brute strength.
Okay, I'd like to call the strategic planning session back to order.
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Kosky?
before we go into the next session, I would like to make a suggestion. We just talked about the boards and commissions, about the liaisons and the training sessions that are going to be available for them. I would like to make a suggestion to the city manager for council consideration that council also be included in that continuing education. As a realtor, I have to do so many hours of continuing education to do a renewal of my license. So I was wondering if maybe council could have some continuing education, maybe 1, 2, 3 sessions a year, work it out so that we could do it on off Tuesdays or on a Saturday morning or something that is workable for everyone. But I would like to go over some of our rules and regulations and become familiar, be reminded about our roles and the roles of city manager, the roles that we have with boards and commissions, just as a refresher course. Thank you.
Great idea. Okay. On to our next presentation is our annual reports. Progress towards a better future. We have presentations, and I'd like to hand it over to Mr. Vanderpool.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we just talked about the importance of all of our volunteers and the many boards and commissions we have, and we highlighted a few of them. And what we want to do now is drill down a little further and hear updates, more specific, detailed updates from the Community Alliance, the African American Coalition, the Youth Advisory Board, and the Sustainability Commission. These are boards that have to report to City Council annually, and we thought this would be a great time at strategic planning to hear from them. They're doing really good work. So I'm really pleased now to introduce Melanie Davis, our Community Relations Director, who I just want to give a shout out to, who she and her team work really, really hard to coordinate all the good work of our boards and commissions and so many other initiatives. And I think you would agree they're doing a really good job. So I'm turning it over to Melanie. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vanderpool, and thank you, City Council, and to all of my colleagues here today. For the last several months, I've had the privilege and the pleasure of working with 7 residents on what I think is our newest commission, which is the Community Alliance. And they've been working hard to put together a strategic plan that will help them achieve their objectives and their mission for making Sterling Heights, or keeping Sterling Heights, I guess, a welcoming community, and really making sure that they work hard to be, so that we are all sure that every single one of our residents feels welcome here, feels respected, feels accepted, and feels safe in our community. So it gives me great pleasure today to introduce to you all Stacy Bari and Ricardo Harris from our Community Alliance, and they're going to run you through their strategic plan this afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Melanie, for the introduction. For those of you that don't know me, again, my name is Stacy Bari. I currently serve as the Vice Chair of the Community Alliance Commission, and I have with me today my wonderful partner in crime, Ricardo Harris, who will do the second half of the presentation. I'm going to first start out with just going through our vision and mission for the Community Alliance Commission. And the vision that we have for this group is to build a culture within the city of Sterling Heights that will intentionally honor and celebrate all people. Our mission of the Community Alliance Commission is to create an inclusive environment, one that is, again, intentional about celebrating acceptance of all people through education, exposure, and events to make Sterling Heights a destination for everyone. community alliance members agree that there are challenges within the concept of unity within the city, but especially among our young people, the youth in our community, in our schools, which is a great place to start with education to help foster the change that we're all hoping to accomplish here. Many of the events that are put together don't have components that not necessarily appeal to everyone in the community, and therefore some of the community alliance members feel that, I think we all feel that these events are something that they'd be excited to attend, especially due to the lack of diversity at the events. In a recent survey, 92% of residents agreed with a statement, "From my perception, I feel Sterling Heights is an inclusive city." 28% of residents feel that race relations have improved since they have lived here in Sterling Heights, while 83% of respondents that have lived here for more than 10 years. 58% of these residents feel race relations have stayed the same, and about 14% feel that they have become worse. Now, this is the way that that we are approaching this issue. While research suggests that race and cultural relations in the city are positive, however, anecdotal feedback suggests some intolerance, misunderstanding that still exists due to a lack of education, a lack of mutual exposure, and biased viewpoints that could in turn cause more serious problems for the city of Sterling Heights in the future if not addressed. The goal of the Community Alliance Commission is to, well, we can talk a little bit about the reason why it's been formed. The Community Alliance Commission has been formed to not only address inequities, both real and perceived, that exist in the city of Sterling Heights, but our ultimate goal is to engage residents in events, activities, and initiatives that focus on education, inclusion, and leadership as a pathway to creating community culture that, again, intentionally honors and celebrates all people. And that brings me to the end of my presentation, and I'd like to introduce my colleague Ricardo Harris, who will complete the remainder of the presentation, and I thank you all for your time today.
Thank you, Stacy. Again, my name is Ricardo Harris. I've been a resident of Sterling Heights for about 10 years. I intentionally chose Sterling Heights when I moved here. I was looking in Chesterfield, I was looking at different places, and when I started looking at the demographics at the time, I felt that this was the place that I wanted to have my family here. So I thank you for the opportunity to present to you today. So our objectives for our committee, we really looked at three objectives that we really wanted to go after. One being education, two being inclusion, and then the third would be focusing with leadership. And so, as you can see, our first portion of our objective is really to promote unity amongst our youth. I think we can all agree that a lot of things are taught at home and caught. And as a father that has two children in both Utica and Wharton Consolidated Schools, I can tell you that some of the things that we thought we were past, we're still not past. And so we really want to promote that unity with our students between that ages of 12 and 18. And we're looking to do some workshops to accomplish that mission. So we would like to have that accomplished by about June of 2023. One of the portions of our strategy to do that is potentially to work with the Macomb Diversity Summit. Annually, they host around 500 students from all the various different high schools in the Macomb County District, and they sit down and they have discussions on diversity and learning about equity and those things. And so usually those sessions are 45 to 60 minutes. And so we're looking to partner with those folks, hopefully to do that by February of 2023. And then another portion of our strategy to engage those youth is to really focus with our schools, some of our local churches, and then even our local youth advisory board to design and potentially host another portion of that. So again, looking to accomplish all that with the students by the end of June of 2023. Another area with education that we really would like to promote is that understanding. A lot of times we have these biases in different things and we just don't know what we don't know. And so we want to promote that understanding by doing weekly social media blitzes, also having newsletters, and having that done consistently over a 12-month period. Again, looking at the strategy of that, but hopefully having that locked in and consistent by June of 2023. And so right now we actually have a pretty robust calendar of some ideas that we can pick and choose from. But again, we're going to be working with the community relations group to really highlight and just trying to figure out what that might look like. Another area of education is that we would also like to promote and have at least two live, and it should be fun, live discussions or town halls. And this is something that kind of came out of our discussions with education to allow our residents to really engage in the root causes, have a conversation, and have, professionals that are, really that know the issues and be able to discuss those issues, but then also create an environment for our residents to feel free to ask questions, of their neighbors. And so we really would like to promote that and have at least two of those events completed by June of 2024. And a couple strategies that we're looking at to try to promote that is potentially having some invites from some of you great folks. Nothing's better than having somebody acknowledge you and say, hey, come out to an event. And so maybe some letters, maybe from the mayor or some of the city council to invite folks out to these events. Another area that we're kind of looking at trying to promote with the events are, maybe having a bingo card. And as people come to various events, they get something checked off, and then eventually they'll be submitted for a raffle or something like that. So those are some of the things that we're strategically looking at to help our residents engage. And then lastly here, again, you'll see a consistent focal point back to education because, again, people don't know what they don't know, right? So we really want to host at least 6 celebrations over the next couple years, piggybacking on existing events, really highlighting those areas. So those areas could be, anywhere between, the Martin Luther King celebrations that we have and all the different things that we have in that calendar. So we're really pulling that information out and then doing those celebrations. So accomplishing that by June of 2023. And so our next objective is inclusion. And so we want to make Sterling Heights the most accessible community for those with special needs. One of our first areas that we really want to look at is conducting an assessment of any barrier-free gaps with our buildings. And so we would like to have that accomplished by June of 2022. And so we'll be looking to work with the facilities manager to do that initial assessment, and if there are areas, come up with some type of mitigation strategies to fix those. And then the second area is, again, piggybacking on existing events. We really would like to do at least 2 events by the June of 2023 to where we can, really focus on at least 100 residents to allow them to go through a life in a day of somebody potentially in a wheelchair or have, a hearing impaired, so they can go through, an obstacle course or maybe go to Sterling Fest and have to go through it with a wheelchair. This will create a level of empathy. Again, tying back to that education, you don't know what you don't know, but if you have to walk a day in someone else's shoes, then when you make a decision, then when you have a conversation with your neighbors, then you can make better decisions that way. So we'll look to work with the community relations directors and park recreation to identify those events and then put together a strategy to move forward with that. And then finally, our last objective was leadership. Obviously, you guys being on the board, when things are good, you're praised, and when things are bad, you get, reamed by some of our residents. So especially in this area of diversity, especially in the area of race in today's climate. Right? So we really want to create a tool, a resource for leadership that they can, kind of have something for their blind spots. Because we don't know what we don't know. So we want to put together some type of auditing of at least 4 events over the next couple years that we can provide recommendations and adjustments. But to that, we want to put together a checklist that, you know, a director, when it's time to submit something to the board or whomever that are the decision makers, has something in hand that can say, okay, I've checked this box. I've thought about this. I've thought about those people. And, you know, of course, nothing is ever 100%, but at least you can say that we tried. You know, at least you can say that you had, you know, did the assessment. And so, again, we want to work with the relations director to kind of figure out those events, but then also work with leadership to figure out exactly what should be in those checklists. And so our next step, I'm sorry, I should have went to the next slide, but our next steps is really just assessing where we're at as a group. Next meeting, we're going to sit down and go through action items, assign the task. Some of us have a lot more, you know, things that we're more passionate about. And so based off of our skill sets, we'll assess, assign action items, and as the slide says, begin to execute the strategic plan. So appreciate your time today. If I'm standing by for questions, or we'll wait until after. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Davis?
Thank you. So the other group that I've had the pleasure of working with over the past several months is the African American Coalition. And they've been working hard over the past several months in really doing a lot of the foundational work that is absolutely critical to making sure that you have a sustainable organization, because we know that this group is going to be here for the long term. We want to make sure that it's around for years to come and that they are doing the great work that needs to be done in our community. And we have Rhonda Powell from Pratt International here. She's one of the consultants that's been working with the group. But also we have here today to present to you all Ayana Yet, who is just a delight. She's been wonderful to work with, and she is the newly elected chair of the steering committee for the African American Coalition. So I'd like to invite Ayana up to the podium at this time.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much, Melanie, for such a lovely introduction. I want to first begin by honoring the land that we live on and build community on, and the opportunity to present this wonderful coalition with you this afternoon. It is honored to present this as a longtime resident of Sterling Heights, but also as the newly elected chair of the steering committee for the African American Coalition. And so today, I'll be presenting with you our progress as we are establishing our coalition and the next steps that we are taking forward to building our longevity. So I'll first begin with our consultants' interviews with the coalition body and the 4 overarching themes that they found within interviewing all of us. So our first theme is that the members that have been a part of this coalition wanted to be sure that our consultants were advancing an agenda set by the members of the coalition, meaning that we are heavily represented and collective, as a collective, and not personally, as was the second overarching theme. Our third one was that some members did drop out of the group because of the initial lack of structure. So we did lose some retention. However, for the members that remained, including myself, we were encouraged by the idea of the coalition because we believe that this is something special. And it was an offering for our community as we went forward to not only centering efforts toward diversity, equity, inclusion, but also focusing on the belonging part of our community. So we went through some exercises and training where we did a lot of relationship building and implicit bias exercises. It is important to know that we as a community are not a monolith. We are not a monolithic community. So we have different experiences and lived understandings as we come forward to connect and really go towards a goal of creating a better place for us and ourselves. And so this training was critical to keep the group moving forward. Oops. So for our structure, we just thankfully developed a structure for our group. So within our steering committee, we have voted to have up to 11 total people, including a chair, a vice chair, secretary, treasurer, a sergeant at arms, and a few members at large. So as you can see, this is some of the faces of who is the steering committee, or who is a part of the steering committee, excuse me. So you see me as the chair, my wonderful vice chair, Diana Bledsoe, our secretary, Gavin Broomfield, our treasurer, Brenda Wilson, our sergeant at arms, Eric Hawkins, and we are still establishing some members at large. But what's very important about our voting and establishing our members at large is that we have had some very great active members that have been along through the journey and the ride of establishing this and the founding of this coalition. So we are super excited to fill these roles in the weeks and months to come. So for our meeting schedule, our monthly meetings are open to anyone who'd like to attend and are an opportunity for the steering commission, or committee, excuse me, to report out the work that has been done with the consultants in between time. So we will have meetings specifically for the steering committee to kind of move our agenda forward, establish a vision, establish a mission, establish our purpose and goals, but then also to have the community at large. So everyone who is interested in learning more about our committee or our coalition and learning more about how they can be involved or be of support are welcome to attend. So our next steps is to create a permanent meeting schedule for the steering committee and the community at large, which is mostly still in progress, but we are pretty much there. We also are working towards creating a group mission, which will be roughly 8 words that the coalition can rally around and really be able to part with or impart with. And so lastly, we will create messaging so that the new steering committee can be consistent and used for future recruitment efforts, because the main goal is the longevity of our coalition. And I would also like to note that we are working towards connecting the African American coalition with broader Macomb County, so that we can offer our coalition as an idea or as a place where other people can either come and show or come and belong to Sterling Heights as residents, or take what we are doing and the work that we are doing to improve their communities where they are, which is very exciting work, given that we do need more places of belonging in Michigan. So stay tuned, important work is in progress. Thank you so very much for offering me the opportunity to speak with you today.
And Madam Chair, moving on, you can see there's so much good work going on with the Community Alliance and the African American Coalition, but we're not done yet. We also want to hear from the Youth Advisory Board, and Marissa Johnson, our administrative liaison, is now going to introduce the chair who'll be leading us through that discussion.
Hi, thank you, City Council and Administration, for giving Youth Advisory Board the opportunity to talk to you today. We have our co-chairs with us today, Allison Haba and Fadia Rabo, and they'll go through our past year at the Youth Advisory Board and what we've been up to, and then what's to come. Thank you.
Hello. Hi, everyone. My name is Fadi Arabu. I'm a senior at International Academy East in Troy, Michigan. I'm chair of the Youth Advisory Board, and I've been with the Youth Advisory Board for about 2 years now.
Hi, everyone. I'm Allison Haba, and I'm the co-chair of Youth Advisory Board. I'm also a senior, and I go to Stevenson just down the road. I've also been in Youth Advisory Board since I was a sophomore, so it's been about 2 years.
Yeah, so let's get started with our mission. So our mission is essentially to develop and promote programs, services, amenities, events, and civic engagement opportunities that make Sterling Heights a more appealing community for those between the ages of 13 and 18. We're very proud to introduce what we've been working on so far.
So ways we can help Sterling Heights become a better community for all. So Youth Advisory Board has the same mission as all the other boards and the same mission that I'm sure all of you guys have as City Council, which is to make Sterling Heights become the best it can be for everyone. But the thing that's unique about our board is that we go about it in a different way. We are a youth advisory board, so our focus is to create engagement and community involvement between young residents and local government. This is extremely important because, as we all know, the youth is the future, and someday we'll be doing what you guys are doing, and the city will be in our hands, which is like a really huge responsibility. So it's really important for young people to get an inside look at the intricacies of what you guys do and just how it all works. We have to be prepared so that we can help the city reach its full potential. But for now, all we can do is use our voice the best that we can, and we meet every month to brainstorm things we want to see implemented, events we want to organize, speakers we want to bring in, activities we want to arrange. But ultimately, our goal is to develop and grow our city as best as we can.
Yeah, so how we're making a difference. So we've highlighted 4 key points. So I'll be talking about sustainability and diversity and inclusion. So as far as sustainability, we've been working with the Parks and Recreation Department, sort of consulting with them to see what we can add, subtract in the parks in the city. And we're talking and taking the input of all the youth in the city, as well as all the residents as well. Actually, this is one of my favorite committees. I'm super interested in sustainability, so this is something I even want to major in college. So I'm really interested in the sustainability committee, the Youth Advisory Board. And then also there's there's the diversity and inclusion. So we're working right now on creating safe spaces within the community center. We're growing as a city, so we're taking new paths, and we think it's very important for all our voices to be heard.
Another one of the committees is mental health, just increasing awareness regarding mental health issues among the youth. I know in the past we've had like even a mental health festival. We haven't been able to do one in the past few years that I've been on the board because due to COVID and everything, but hopefully we get to do it in the future. And mostly just like utilizing the teen room that we have here in the community center for like people to come and just like talk about things that they feel they need to get off their chest, because it's like we can all relate to each other, and just bringing in speakers who might be able to help, things like that. The last committee is local government awareness, which is actually just educating teens on local government and increasing opportunities to serve and connect with the city. I feel like a really strong connection to this one. It's my personal favorite because I am really interested in politics, and like I want to major in political science and then go into law. And I've like spoken with the mayor before. Like I remember when I was younger, I was in 10th grade and I emailed him and I'm like, how do I make a difference? Like I just really wanted to like do something. And he's like, you have to start small. Like you can't just like have your head like, it's good to have your head in the clouds, but like you have to like ground yourself a little bit. And he was telling me that the best way to start is locally, like things that you guys are doing. And Youth Advisory Board was what he recommended to me. And that was like the first thing that I did. And I feel like it's like a really good way for me to start. And I'm really grateful that I found it.
Yep. So what we've been up to in Sterling Heights, so I'll be talking about the Day in the Life Mask Up event and Parks and Recreation Master Plan. So as far as Day in the Life, Youth Advisory Board has invited some people from the city to sort of come in and tell their, what they do in the city. So we've had, like Allison said, Mayor Taylor come in, show us this beautiful community center. We've also had a consultant from the Parks and Recreation Department come in our previous meetings, and also the police department sort of telling us what they do in their life. And so we've also had our mask up video. So last year, we created a video on the importance of masking up, so watching over all our peers and our community during the uncertain times. And then our Parks and Recreation Master Plan. So like I said before, looking at our parks in the city, revising them to meet the needs of the youth. And we've also had our vaping town hall, which was very, very successful.
The other thing is civic involvement. Like I said, Youth Advisory Board has helped increase involvement with our peers who are not even part of Youth Advisory Board. I've gotten people to come to some of the events that we've had here, and a lot of people get involved in like tutoring. People from like NHS or Key Club just in high school, they'll like hear about things that we have planned, and they'll just come and just become a better part of like our community because they're just engaged and involved. Another thing that we've done is the park cleanup. We've worked with community organizations to clean the parks and kick off. We're also kicking off future park cleanup initiatives, like when it gets a little warmer outside.
Perfect. So what we're working on right now and hope to see next within the Youth Advisory Board, So inclusion, so like I've said before, working on expanding to the city center. Like I said, inclusion is something we're all working a part of very much with this new community center, and educating. So like Allison mentioned with the park cleanup. So Sterling Heights is obviously a beautiful city with all its nature. So really preserving that within our parks is super important. So our environmental efforts are something that we hope to be able to continue.
Just connecting, this is a huge goal. For us, it's to create more opportunities for younger people to connect with our local leaders and city officials. Like Fadi mentioned a few times, we had the whole Meet the Mayor event on Zoom where he showed us the community center. Councilman Henry Inez actually came to one of our meetings one time, and he just had pizza with us, and we just talked about like plans for sustainability, and we just discussed like things we wanted to see implemented in the future. And I think that was just a really great opportunity for us to get an inside look at the intricacies of what City Council does, and if it interests any of us in the future, we got an inside look as to what that would be like.
Well, I just want to take the time now to thank everyone. I'm honored to represent such a wonderful board, and I truly see a positive future for the Youth Advisory Board as well as the city.
That's pretty much it. I hope you guys, this presentation gave you guys a good look into what we do as Youth Advisory Board and our plans for the future. Thank you all for giving us the chance to make our voices heard.
Thank you. Awesome job. At this point, I'd like to invite Chris McLeod.
Good afternoon again, Council, Mr. Vanderpool. For about the last year and a half, Allison Bittner and myself have had the great pleasure of working with the Sustainability Commission. This is, I have to admit, in 22 years of doing this, this is probably one of the most dedicated, one of the most go-getting boards I've ever seen. Not to diminish the work of the Planning Commission or ZBA, but these guys are really, really an intense board, and it's really great to see. And it really shows the impassioned stance that they have for sustainability within the city. But with that being said, I mean, they've created a sustainability plan that I think, and they did it all virtually, by the way, over Zoom, over the course of doing that. That is basically, I would put it up against the work of any consultant that the city could have brought in. They did it all themselves. So, but with that being said, Nathan Inks is here, our chairperson, as well as Mark Graff, our vice chair. Nathan will be presenting the work that the Sustainability Commission has done and kind of where things stand now. And we will all be here for questions if council has any. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that introduction, Mr. McLeod. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of council, Mr. Vanderpool, and city administration. I am Nathan Inks, the chair of the Sustainability Commission. Also present with me today is Mark Graff, our vice chair. Our secretary is Jonathan Matthews. And we also have two other members, Mobashira Faruqi and Michael Tabbert. And I'd like to thank and acknowledge the work of two of our former members who are no longer on the commission, Ashley Frank and Rolanda Robinson, who played an integral role in developing and ultimately adopting the sustainability plan. So the responsibilities of the Sustainability Commission are laid out in the ordinance that created the Sustainability Commission. I won't go through and read these individually, but those are found in the ordinance, and we have used those responsibilities to guide us in determining the scope of our duties in both creating the sustainability plan as well as beginning to implement the plan. So the plan began with a draft sustainability plan that was created by an intern for the city in summer of 2019. And then in March of 2020, City Council created the Sustainability Commission ordinance that actually created the Sustainability Commission. Later that summer, Council began appointing members to the commission, and we began drafting and revising the sustainability plan that September. We ultimately adopted the sustainability plan at our meeting in June of 2021, and that was distributed to Council in the next month. Mr. McLeod and myself presented the sustainability plan to council at the September 2021 meeting. And then through the fall of 2021, we began going through and prioritizing the various action items that were found in the sustainability plan. That brings us to today. We're here at strategic planning, and then moving forward, we'll be continuing to plan on how we're going to implement the various action items that we have prioritized. And in the future, hopefully begin actually adopting those various action items and then
revising the sustainability plan as well as the commission sees appropriate. So since the Sustainability Commission was created in the summer of 2020, we've tackled a significant number of issues. A couple of the items that we have reviewed and provided recommendations to council and city administration on were curbside recycling, as well as the amendments to the city's tree preservation ordinance that were passed by city council recently. As Mr. McLeod indicated, however, the most significant accomplishment from the commission was the adoption of the sustainability plan, which was the city's first comprehensive plan that went through and addressed various sustainability issues. As Mr. McLeod indicated, much of the drafting and revising of that plan took place virtually due to the COVID-19 pandemic. While that was challenging at times, it was very rewarding when the plan was ultimately adopted, as I indicated at our June meeting of 2021. The framework of the plan was based on a number of sources, but one of the most significant sources that we used were the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. There were 17 of those goals that the United Nations had established, and we felt that 11 of those were relevant to the scope of the Sustainability Commission as outlined in the ordinance that established commission, and those are shown here in the colored boxes. So the plan includes a number of sections based on broad sustainability topics, including natural assets, sustainable mobility, sustainable development and land use, and environmental stewardship. Within the adopted plan, there's a comprehensive series of implementation action items that comes at the end of those sections. Each section of the plan has its own specific set of action items that specifically relate to that specific subject. Along with those specific action items are a list of responsible parties, and those would be boards, commissions, or departments that would be responsible for either weighing input into whether those action items should be pursued and ultimately adopting them. Each action item also includes a section that indicates how it relates back to the city's 2030 visioning plan. So once the plan was drafted and we had established those various action items, the commission began this past fall going through and establishing a plan for implementing those action items. We thought that the best way to do that would be to go through and rank each action item based on a cost-benefit analysis. So we went through and provided costs and benefits for each of those action items and had a conversation at our various meetings throughout the fall about how we felt certain items would be the most impactful in the near term for the city. So there were a list of 15 action items that rose to the top that we came to a pretty comprehensive agreement on that we think would be the most impactful for the city to pursue in the near future. And those are seeking opportunities to acquire vacant parcels for open space for active or passive recreation, as well as natural conservation. Collaborating with key agencies on regional transportation initiatives. Incorporating sustainability principles into various plans and ordinances and codes in the city, such as the master plan, the zoning ordinance, engineering standards, and other codes. Exploring amending these zoning ordinances to address alternative energy sources, such as wind and solar. Exploring updating the city's ordinances to ensure best practices with tree preservation. Implementing processes for measuring the city's carbon footprint and total energy use. Increasing tree planting requirements for new developments. Exploring enacting a wetland ordinance. Exploring the adoption of a green stormwater infrastructure plan. Incorporating non-motorized pedestrian shared spaces into walkable node concepts within the master plan, such as the mixed-use development nodes. Implementing universal curbside recycling. Pursuing grant funding and partnerships to assist in the creation and maintenance of public trails. Exploring the creation of a stormwater utility. Reducing the use of plastic at city facilities and events. And considering using the social cost of carbon in future budgeting risk planning. So Going forward, the Sustainability Commission will begin researching information and determining best practices for each of these identified 15 items. This effort will likely be conducted with various boards, commissions, departments, and administrators, and those would be the responsible parties that are identified at the end of each section in the sustainability plan. The information that the Sustainability Commission gathers will then be brought forward in a more formal manner to those various boards, commissions, departments, administrators, with the hope that each action item will either be result in a potential creation of a new ordinance, amendments to existing ordinances, changes to master plan policies, department administrative policies, et cetera. With that, I would like to thank you for this opportunity to present to the Council and Administration today. If you have any questions, myself or Mr. Graff are happy to answer those for you.
Thank you, Mr. Inks. At this time, I'd like to open it up to the public. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak at this time? Seeing none, I will open it up to my colleagues on council.
You go.
You go.
No, you go.
Anybody else?
Mr. Yanez.
Madam Chair. So I just want to say thanks to everybody that presented today and every member of all these committees and commissions. You know, honestly, this may sound a little corny, but you give me hope. You definitely give me hope. As I was listening to the comments, I was thinking about the work that the Community Alliance and the African American Coalition do, you know, to help bring our community together. I'm thinking about the Sustainability Commission and how our city will move forward into this great unknown of climate change and how that's going to impact us as a whole. And then I look at the Youth Advisory Board that sort of bridges those committees together with their interests. And I'm really, like I said, I'm just really hopeful, especially with the Youth Advisory Board. I've done a panel 3 times now at Troy High School and for their government class. And every year that I've gone there, I ask, it's a room full of kids, and I ask them, you know, who plans on getting involved in politics or local government or public service, and not one hand goes up, not one. And these are really smart kids, you know, and they all want to be computer scientists, doctors, attorneys, no offense. They're really smart. Some really smart kids, yes, from Troy, yes. And, you know, that really bothers me, the fact that you know, people just don't look at public service anymore. And so to hear someone from the Youth Advisory Committee talk about that is welcomed. And just the fact that people are so willing to work to bring our community together. One of the things I didn't bring up when we were talking about our strengths and weaknesses, you know, we speak. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. I think each school system, Utica and Warren Con, speak about 50 different languages within that school system. Is that about right? But when you go on our city website and you try to find the translation button, it's kind of hard to find. So I'm kind of hoping that that's one of the things that we can fix as we move along here. But I'm just going to stop there and say I am just so impressed with the quality of individuals that we have on these boards and commissions and the work that they do. I'm just so grateful and so thankful, and so I want to just say thank you to each and every one of them. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Any other comments? Mrs. Arco?
Sure. You know, and first of all, I have to agree with my colleague, Mr. Yanez. It is a sign of hope. But what I did hear as each committee set their own goals was a common thread for each committee: education, inclusion, leadership, diversity, sustainability, mental health. And when you put this all together, it's like, yes, they are concentrating on different areas to get to a specific goal, but you're all working in the same direction. And that's what's so important, is that you don't have to all be in the same place at the same time, but you're all moving. Mr. Yanez brought up a good point as far as he is talking to students that, a political career. There's, I think, a definition between somebody that does civil service and another person that's a politician. And simply put, I think a politician sometimes acts in their own best interest, where somebody that does public service acts in the best interest of all. And I think that politics anymore has gotten a dirty name. So it's like if we stay away from that name and concentrate on what we really do here is community service, public service, and serving another person or another community, I think that's where you will have the interest from some of our youth. My other thought is the Youth Advisory Commission was saying that someday they want to sit in these chairs and making these decisions. My first thought was, who's going to be sitting in your chairs, because you have a time limit for as long as you can serve. So I'm hoping that you're encouraging underclassmen that are in the same schools that you're in to take a part in this Youth Advisory Board, because we really do need you in order for it to continue. And I think that's all I took, but thank you so much. Volunteers are so important, and we certainly do appreciate it. And keep up the good work.
Anyone else?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Radke?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just briefly, I want to piggyback on the comments of my colleagues. It's always so wonderful to see the wonderful work done by so many of the groups in our city and how much of an impact it has. I mean, a lot of the reports and the policy recommendations you make their way up to the city council, and we act on them. We have a bit of a different view. You guys all have a very specific view as the purview of your commission. We have a view of the entire city. But I just want to thank you for all the hard work that you've done. It really is something. And there's so many great things going on in the city. I also agree with Councilman Yanez. We need to do more to make sure that the entire city is included in our discussions and our things. We have 50 languages spoken here, but we know that certain communities speak it a lot more than others. And I think we need to make a point to put out city materials and our ballots in languages other than English. Because I know that a significant part of our population, 1/3 we estimate, was born abroad. And maybe they don't speak English like my grandmother spoke English. Maybe they speak it just enough to pass a citizenship test, but not enough to really fully participate in our civic life. So I would highly urge the administration to work on initiatives to make sure that every member of our community is being reached by us and is understanding their civic responsibility. I mean, I sit in this room with so many people, and I know that the entire council, we live on the east side of the city. We have no member of council who's on the west side of the city. And sometimes I think that through no intention of our own, we really do try to get around the entire city, that we might have some blind spots. We can't be everywhere. People call me and they say, I'm over here and I have this giant pothole on my street. And I say, well, I didn't know it until you brought it to my attention. So I would urge our community members, especially where you don't have someone so close by, to bring things to our attention. That way we can remedy them. Without you, we're just up here just trying to do our best. So with that, I want to thank everyone who spoke today. It's always very informative to hear from you. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Radke.
Madam Chair, thank you. I am very impressed with the boards and commissions, especially the last ones. I've learned a lot. I'm glad to see that they have been extremely successful because they are fairly new committees. And I'm really pleased with what they've accomplished. But the one that I really like is the Sustainability Commission. And I really like their plan. And through the chair to Mr. Inks, I believe you said that you have 15 issues in your plan, and I really, truly like them. Are there any that might fall under the ARP plan for 19.8 million?
Potentially.
Maybe some wetlands that we might buy for nature preserve, or a path from Kleino to Edison Court?
Those would be the two that come to mind.
Lobbying.
I'm just making my point that I certainly agree with you, and if there's anything there that you could help me influence administration as to where to spend that money, I would greatly appreciate it, and you could start now.
We'll keep that in mind at our February meeting.
Thank you very much. You did a fantastic job, you and your committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Koski.
That's all.
Thank you. I just want to echo the sentiments of my colleagues on council. Thank you to all the boards and commissions. You all do a phenomenal job, and we wouldn't be the city we are without each and every one of you contributing what you do. As far as our youth advisory board, I'm encouraged to hear that some of our youth want to get involved in city government. I, too, have spoken to many government classes at Sterling Heights High School, and it amazes me some of their issues that aren't issues to the rest of us because we're not 16 and 17 years old anymore. I know it's a shock, but you know, the youth do have issues that the city needs to address, and the more we can get those residents involved in the discussion at the table, I think the better off we'll be in the future. We're looking at visioning 2045 today, and you know, I think that 2040, that's what we're all about. It's those residents that we need to convince to come to the table and to be part of the discussion. So I thank all of you. I've enjoyed, I've attended the African American Coalition, and I really like your group. I wasn't sure where that was all going and how we were wanted to be involved in that. And it's a great group, and I have high expectations and a lot of, I think you're going to do a really good job and bring your mission or the mission of the group forward to the community of Sterling Heights and make us better for it. So on that note, it is time for City Council General Visioning comments. So back to my colleagues. Does anyone want to start? Okay. No comments?
Oh, I need comments.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I thought we had communications from citizens.
No,
first.
that's
I would have preferred to hear from frankly, I would have preferred to hear from the citizens prior to our comments. Yeah, still got a chance. There's always a chance. So, I got a lot of notes here, so hang in there with me. I think we have, what, 3 hours booked for this?
No.
We do.
Yes, we do.
We will not be taking 3 hours.
All right, so it's 2.5. So, yeah, no 3 minutes here.
Egg timer, right?
So one of my all-time favorite movies is The Wizard of Oz. Go figure, right? And here's the thing about The Wizard of Oz, right? The great and powerful Oz is pretty awesome. But as we find out in the movie, Oz doesn't happen unless there's a man behind the curtain pulling the levers. And those levers are pulled every single day by the people that are in this room, by our volunteers, by the residents, the taxpayers who pay for this whole thing, and especially by our employees, the ones that are across the street working, down at the fire station working, out on the road patrolling the roads working every single day. And we can never forget that these are the folks that pull the levers that make this city a great city. It's you know, to bring up some of these things, it's almost like we have an embarrassment of riches. You know, we're going to complain about things that other cities wish they could complain about. You know, what brings to mind was a comment that was made, I think, by Councilman Radke earlier about, you know, funding these operations and how, because of Headley, you know, we're going to find ourselves in a bind. There's already communities, as you all know, what we call bedroom communities that are already in this bind, trying to fund just one more police officer, right? Just what happens when their fire truck breaks down? You know, they just can't go into their reserves and pull out the money to buy a new one, and we can do that. And I'm very grateful that we're in this position, and this city council, long before I was on city council, worked so hard to make sure that we could do that. But we do have some things that, you know, now this is the wish list. I call this Wish List Tuesday, and I have a wish list here. And a lot of it has to do with sustainability, and I really want to thank the Sustainability Commission for their great work on on their paper, as well as their 15 points that they want, that they came up with. And so I'm going to start off with that. And the first thing is our city needs an internal recycling program. I mean, as an operation, the city of Sterling Heights as an entity needs to have an internal recycling program. And the first thing I did, one of the first things I did today is I walked over to that trash can, and there was nothing in the trash can except one water bottle. And if you know anything about recycling, this is probably one of the most valuable pieces of recycling material there is. This and cardboard, corrugated cardboard. And I have no idea how many of these that we throw out. You go over to Dodge Park, especially after an event, we have a trash can next to a recycling can, and you have both trash and recycling in each one of those cans. So there's no recycling. It's contaminated, so it's all trash. And I was here one day doing some business, and I saw the lady who does the cleaning, the maintenance, and the contractor, and she had this big wheeled, you know, like a laundry container thing full of cardboard boxes that were not even broken down. They were just kind of piled in there. And I asked her if she was taking those out to the recycle bin. She goes, no, they go in the trash. We don't even recycle our cardboard. And I noticed when I did Meals on Wheels at the Sears Center the other day, Martin Luther King Day, I walked back where the workers work for the vaccinations and so forth, and we just got tons and tons and tons of cardboard boxes. And they all go in the trash. It all goes in the trash. This city, if we're going to force people to pay for a curbside recycling program, then we need to get our act together. Leaders lead. We just can't tell people, this is it, you're going to have to pay your $8 a month. Oh, and by the way, we're going to throw our recyclables in the trash. Not acceptable. So I call on the city to formulate an internal recycling program. One of the things, the other thing I think we need to do is phase out curbside organic recycling. This is sort of I don't even know how we got into this idea where you stuff your leaves and grass into a paper bag and set it on the curb, and then this big truck that burns diesel fuel drives around the city and picks it up, and then and then drives it all the way out to some composting center. And that adds to our carbon footprint like there's no tomorrow, when you could easily mulch it back into your yard. Or the city should start its own composting operation. We could do that. We have the land mass to do that. And then we could take the compost and use it on our community garden, or give it to citizens for their gardens, or what have you. We could do a much better job with organic recycling. And I don't even want to begin to talk about all the restaurants in the city that throw food waste away, and as well as cardboard and plastic that just ends up in the trash. I was glad to see the commission talk about the monitoring the carbon footprint. I think that is something that we're just going to have to, as we move forward again, impacting climate change. We don't live in a bubble. We contribute to the climate impact as much as anybody else. We don't have wildland fires. We're not seeing the flooding that you see on the East Coast or the Gulf states or what have you, but we still contribute to it. And we really have to monitor our carbon footprint. As a matter of fact, I'll go one step farther, and I think we have to monetize our carbon footprint and use that as a liability. So when we determine whether it's cost effective to buy an electric car or not, we include monetizing our carbon footprint. We need to cut lawns a lot less around here. We had this discussion, and I brought it up earlier, we had this discussion about the bicycle path behind Freedom Hill, and that we're taking on the $17,000 to maintain it, and the $17,000 is for lawn cutting. Lawn equipment provides or ejects more pollution into the atmosphere than automobiles do. And we cut a lot, and we spend a lot of money on mowing lawns. So our lawns look nice and our grass areas look nice. I think one of the things that we can do, probably do a number of things, but I think one of the things that we can do is work with Michigan State University. They've been working and testing low grow turfs, And I would be interested in finding out what we could do to get some of those low-grow turfs, what it would cost to put those in, and reduce the amount of mowing, not only to save financial costs, but the impact on climate. As far as job training goes, which I think is a fantastic idea, but one of the things the city needs to do, I believe, is adopt a fair contracting ordinance. The building trades, the union building trades provide apprenticeships. And I've been to 4 of their schools: electrical, bricklayer, sheet metal worker, and plumber pipe fitter. They are incredible schools. I've seen some of the competitions they do. They really prepare their workers. And the best part is apprentices get paid while they're learning. If we want to do job training, and they can't get enough people. I spoke to, there's a Hispanic group of bricklayers. They asked me to speak to this group, and I thought they were Hispanic like me. And they're not, they're from Mexico. Hardly anybody spoke English. And nearly half the union bricklayers in this area, local too, are from Mexico now, because there's no kids locally that want to even get into this trade, a trade where they're going to make 6 figures. One of the ways that we can help with those apprenticeships is adopting a fair contracting ordinance to build, to make sure that those trade schools are maintained. Strategic planning, I'll go with this next. I think this was a little bit outside. This is only my 3rd one. It's different than the first 2 because of the ARPA money discussion that we had. And my impression of the first 2 was, well, you know, city administration really kind of already set this all up. We're going to go ahead and do it anyways. It was more of a presentation. We got to talk about it, yeah, but you know, not a whole lot was going to change. I didn't feel like I had a whole lot of input on past strategic planning sessions. And I think we really need to maybe start taking a look at how we want to do strategic planning to really have input from city council as well as input from citizens on the direction our city is going to go. I think we can really do something in a more positive, collaborative step with strategic planning. I don't have any answers or suggestions other than, I don't know, maybe we do an electronic suggestion box or something like that, or what have you. But I think we really, we should task administration take a look at strategic planning in the future and how we go about doing this process. You know, we get presented with all this information. We're just absorbing it as we're sitting here. We don't really have time to think about it, chew on it, you know, think about the good and the bad, just kind of come back. Everything sounds great right off the bat. And then if you think about it a while, maybe start picking away some problems at it. And I think we really need to do that. We really need to take a look at all the issues that we have and really think about them before we act on them. So I call on city administration to rethink strategic planning and how we do this. I would like to see the city work with nonprofits and community groups to get rid of our trash. I know the Youth Advisory Board talked about doing trash cleanups. I've done trash cleanups with Clinton River Watershed Council. I've done some on my own. But I think I'd like to see more concerted effort. I mean, I know the trash that's in my area, and I've picked it up. Like I said, I've worked with Clinton River Watershed Council, and they'll pick a park, and we'll go out there and clean up trash. The Chaldean Community Foundation did an anti-tobacco event last year. We picked up cigarette butts, and it was, 1, gross, and 2, it was amazing how many cigarette butts we picked up just out of Nelson Park. It was amazing. I would like to see the city go one step farther and have a couple of days after the snow melt, when the weather starts warming up a little bit, before all the trees bud and the grass grows, to go through the city and clean up all the trash that we can pick up. And include, by the way, the corporations who, and businesses where trash accumulates around them, and maybe, you know, they pick up part of the tab for helping out. I'd like to see the city start an internship program to assist various programs, especially providing information to citizens going door to door. We do a great job with communications around here, but we're not 100%. We're just not. You can't never be 100%. And, one of the things that I think all of us as elected officials and therefore politicians have found out when you talk to citizens and engage face-to-face, you communicate a much different message. There's a lot of things that people make assumptions about as for government or how things happen or why they happen. I was just dealing with it today in regards to the Freedom Hill Bike Trail and how there's going to be crime and so forth because they're putting this trail in, and we know that that's really not the case based on the other trails that have gone in, and we haven't had any experience in regards to crime or so forth. But we don't really communicate that to folks. And, having town halls, what have you, having face-to-face conversations, or just dropping a piece of lid at the door. I think doing internship programs for kids either going to college or about to go into college or in college to get either credit or what have you to work inside local government and help with various departments and communications, I think would be very beneficial to the city. One more. The other thing, I'm going to go back here. This doesn't necessarily come under the heading of strategic planning, but one thing I would like to see from in a future meeting is I would like to know how our social worker is doing. I know that she has done a number of she's had a number of contacts with folks both inside and outside the police department, that kind of work. I'd really be curious to find out what she's finding as she's out there and what kind of needs that we have within the city and how to address those needs and what's going on out in the city. I know police department, fire department, they deal with mental health problems all the time, but we don't necessarily get the feedback from police and fire where the social worker was really working on these issues to help try to solve these issues. And it's not just mental health, it's a number of issues, senior issues, so forth. I'd like to find out from her what her experiences are and what her thoughts are as far as the needs for the city. And then, last but not least, I will use this opportunity to announce that starting this spring, and I don't have anything specific yet, but I will post it when I do, I am going to start a Walk with Your Councilman event. Again, starting this spring, I'm going to go out on a weekly basis, and I'll post the community that I'm going to walk in, and I'm hoping that either my colleagues or somebody in that neighborhood or whatever walk with me, because you don't really appreciate the condition of this city, both good or bad, until you actually walk it. And I just remember driving down the streets in the fire truck while I'm at work, and I'm thinking, oh, this is a beautiful home, this is a nice neighborhood, and so forth. But I also notice, like, when I go for walks, whether I walk from home to here, or I walk my dog somewhere, or what have you, you start to see the little things that just aren't right and that need to be fixed. And I keep on my phone a picture that somebody sent me of their neighborhood and all the bad sidewalks just in that little couple block area that they walk in. And so I want to connect more with our citizens, and one of the best ways I think I can do that is actually go out. So I think Councilman Radke said, we all live on this side of Van Dyke. I'm going to go on the west side. I'm going to walk. I'm going to talk to people, invite them to walk with me. I want to hear about what their situations are, and I'm going to keep track of that and provide feedback and hopefully some ideas on how to make their neighborhoods in this city better. So, Madam Chair, that's my wish list.
Thank you,
Wish
Mr.
List
Yanis.
Tuesday. I appreciate it, and I want to thank everybody again for their presentations. I want to thank all the directors for all the hard work they do, and please go back and tell your staffs how much I appreciate the work that they do to make the city great every single day. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Who would like to be next?
Mrs.
Ziarko.
Sure. I won't be as long.
She's more concerned.
That's okay. First, I'm going to thank everybody first for all the time that they put into bringing us to this presentation. As you all know, because I say it every year, this is my favorite meeting. of the entire year. And it's a meeting of possibilities, is what it is. It doesn't mean that we're going to do all of this or none of this. It just means we get a chance to talk about it, and know that we have opportunities. So, and we're going to act on some of them. But, you know, we were talking about money. That's, you know, that always gets my attention. And in the future, the lack of it. But we need to keep an eye on things that are out of our control. And first of all, I still get on my soapbox about revenue sharing. We don't get our fair share back, but yet the residents voted for this. It was a vote of the people, and it's not happening, but nobody's doing anything about it. I don't see any uproar in Lansing and saying, give us the money that you promised us. Instead, we get the elimination of the personal property tax with no replacement for it. Do they care that it costs us $1 million a year? No, because, you know, it makes all of them look good. So it isn't just about, you know, bringing it down to the local level and you figuring out a solution to this, and oh, the solution is always, well, let's just raise the taxes because, you know, we have to have this. It's not the answer. It's not the answer. So that was what really caught my attention today as far as, you know, lack of money in the future is something that we need to work on, but now, not later. And really, we're all moving in the right direction. I mean, when I stop and think it's been 2 years now that we don't live the life that we did 2 years ago. And like I've said, you know, we always thought of public safety as being police, fire, DPW, and we're finding out that public safety is actually public health. And if you're not healthy, then you're not going to have any of this. So we can talk about this and say this is what we want, but it's our public health is so important. And you know, who thought that that would be the major concern of ours 3 years ago? So, I mean, it's something that we need to look into. I really don't have a wish list for today because my wishes usually come up when I find that we have an issue that needs to be resolved. And I also think, you know, we talk about where people live in the city, but because we are all at large, our city is not divided. It doesn't matter where you live in this city, your problem is my problem. So if I hear from somebody that's in the northwest sector, or I hear from somebody that lives in the northeast sector, it doesn't matter. It's my problem, and it's got to be something that I help you resolve. So, so those are just things that, you know, even your mind starts working about, well, you know, what's your role? What's this all about? Strategic planning. But I think that we have, and I'll stand by this as long as I'm sitting in this chair, is that we have the best form of government that there is, and that's the manager council form of government. We pay somebody to run this operation, this corporation, and to do it right. So, and then, because I'm hoping that, you know, he's smart enough to hire people that are smarter than he is to write each department. Each department head is probably smarter than he is because they concentrate on what they know. So, yeah, and then he brings it all together. But I mean, that's part of it. I mean, he's not an expert in public safety or he's not an expert in planning, but the people that surround him know what they're doing. So that's why they're good to have on the team. And like I said, I just thank you for being here and for all of your input and for guiding us in the right direction. And that goes for the volunteers as well. It's a guiding force that, you know, we're all, and that's why we're successful. That's why this is an example to other cities in the state. So I think that's all I have to say today, but thank you for listening.
Okay. Mrs. Koski?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think Councilman Yanis has pretty much said all the thoughts that I had in my head. But to add to those, this has been a very good planning session. Communication is good here in the city, but I think it could be a little bit better. I would like to have more input from our residents, not just a survey where the questions are already prepared, or what do you think about this plan that we have? I would like to know what they think. I remember, I think it was, the fire department that used to put out the cards that say, we want to know. I would like to start getting those out to the residents again. We want to know, what do you think? What's going on in your neighborhood? What would you like to see changed? How can we help you? And as far as nobody living on the west side of Van Dyke, I lived at 14 Mill and Ryan for 32 years, and now I live at Hayes and Clinton River for the last 20 years. So I think I know the city pretty good. And we are at large. All the residents of Sterling Heights are important to us. Every section of the city is important to us. And I know I can speak for every council person at the table. We care about everyone. So with that said, I enjoyed the presentations from the boards and commissions. The last 4 newly appointed boards and commissions, it was really enlightening to see and hear what they have done and how they have set their goals and their mission statements and so on. I would like to see council do that more often. I would like to know what's happening with all the boards. If there was some way that we could have face-to-face contact with them once a year, once every 6 months, whatever, just to know what they're doing, what their needs are, how can council help them with their goals and their missions. With that said, as far as my favorite board and commission, of course, everyone knows sustainability. I want my path. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Kosky. Mr. Radke?
Madam Chair, thank you. This is a meeting of possibilities. There's always a fun wish list, so I'll work my way down the list and then I'll address some of the other things that I see. But I totally agree with Councilman Yanis that we need to have an internal recycling program here at City Hall. And more than that, I think we need to mandate recycling on our businesses, because I know that in Ann Arbor, all businesses are required to recycle. And the idea that even the condo complex where I live, they don't recycle. And it's a really, we say we're living in the 21st century, but we have 20th century ideas here where we haven't even moved forward. We're the largest city in the state that doesn't have curbside recycling, period. And we've talked about this ad nauseum, and I find it very frustrating because we're locked into a contract right now that was negotiated by a prior council that was penny wise and pound foolish. They could have mandated curbside recycling for the low cost of, I think it was $12 a home per year, and they chose not to. And I just want to remind the people at home, the decisions we make affect us not just today, but in the 7-year contract that we're currently living under. And if one council person had changed their mind, you'd all have curbside recycling at almost no cost. And that contract will frustrate me till my dying day, because I was in the audience that day and I said to every member of that council, vote yes, and they didn't. It's so frustrating even now. To go further than that, there's a lot of complaints about trash pickup on social media, on everything else. And I guess through the chair to our DPW director, Mr. Moore, something we've talked about before in the past is that how many stops do we have every day in Sterling Heights where the trash gets picked up? Through the chair, I'm sorry.
Mr. Moore?
Thank you, Councilman Radke. So every week we have 40,000 refuse stops, 40,000 in the right season compost stops, plus 10,000 recycling stops. So you're looking at just shy of 100,000 service stops every single week. So times 4 for a month.
And there are some issues, and I've seen videos of these issues, where a trash can gets thrown or trash gets spilled in the street. But we have a robust program with GFL to address these issues, do we not? Through the chair to Mr. Moore?
We do. In fact, we've engaged GFL over the last month to start creating an administrative report that tracks the calls that come in that are complaints from residents and what the solution is to said complaint.
That's wonderful. I mean, that's even better than what I was going to suggest you do something like that, because I talk to residents. I know that the complaint's such a small share, but when it's your trash can getting kicked to the curb or when it's trash dumped in front of your home, to you, it's the only issue. I mean, the city does a couple things, and when they don't do that one thing that you feel like you pay for well, I think it flavors all your other interactions. So I commend you for creating that report. I'd like to see it when it's done. Anything we can do to improve trash pickup, and I think we do a really good job with what we have, but anything we can do, I would be strongly in favor of. I concur with Councilman Yanis. Thank you, Mr. Moore. I concur with Councilman Yanis on a responsible contracting ordinance. You know, we're sitting in a recreation center that was built by non-union labor, and during the construction of this facility, there were several safety issues with the non-union labor outside that I observed myself, including several men in a trench without hard hats, high visibility gear, working in an unboxed trench while buckets, which could take off someone's head, were moving above them. And you see that with cut rate deals. You know, we low bid things here, that's a great thing, and we should low bid things. But sometimes we have to take a step backward and say, is that low bid the best bid? Because, you know, if someone got killed in that construction site, which I have pictures of, and I'll show to any member of the council or any member of the public, if someone had gotten killed there, I'd feel personally responsible. And it was because we had a bidder that seemed to be cutting every number of corners. I was so pleased that the most recent renovations went to a strong union company like Roncelli, and I think we need to codify. I don't know if it's fair or responsible, but at the end of the day, I think that Ann Arbor's done this. We need to codify that we expect more from the people that we give our business with, too. I mean, when we're giving out, you know, $20 million contracts or even trash contracts that cost millions and millions of dollars, you know, we should have a higher standard because it's a lot of business for them. And sometimes going to the lowest of the low produces a not so great result. So I don't have an answer for how that ordinance should be written or what the best way to write it would be, but I'd urge my colleagues to really give some thought to it because I think we need to make a change and make sure it's codified. I was hoping today for a report on our diversity efforts. I guess that's still in the mix. We're working on that because to me at least, I think the city in some respects has moved forward on diversity issues, but in other respects has moved backward. And, you know, I think about this every time I see a new class of firefighters, especially come in. I believe through the chair to the fire chief, Mr. Edmond, do we have any African-American members of our fire department at this point?
Councilman Radke, thank you. Right now, we do not, and we are doing recruiting to increase those efforts.
Well, I hope that we are successful because in a city that is between 8 and 10% African-American, the idea that we cannot recruit one African-American firefighter, it really boggles me, and we can do better. You know, our city government should reflect the residents that we represent. And I know we're making efforts in this regard, but sometimes it's just, I feel like it's taking too long. You know, people, and I've had this so many times, I'm step back for a second, had conversations with people, and they'll say, you know, especially when I'm talking with people who do not live in Sterling Heights is not welcoming to diversity. Sterling Heights is not welcoming to minorities. Sterling Heights is not welcoming to the LGBTQ community or anything like that. And I'll say, well, that's not reflected in our numbers because our African-American population, for example, is growing. And they'll say, no, it's not, I don't believe you. And by numbers, it's true, but we have an image problem. It's not just a numbers problem, it's an image problem. And I don't know how to square the circle because we're doing, I know the administration is, and my colleagues are, we're doing everything from the bottom up to push this up. And I don't know what we need to do, but we need to fix our image problem because I was talking to someone, they're talking about cities in Oakland County. Do you know, I know city administration does, we have a higher percentage of African Americans in a lot of cities in Oakland County. But people will say to me, they'll say, they're more friendly, there's more African Americans there. No, there's not. There's more in Sterling Heights. But we're just not doing a good enough job, I guess, presenting that to people so they understand it. Because I think there's tremendous value here, and I think this city really has changed from when I grew up here, when we referred to it as Sterling Whites, and there was issues from when I moved from Detroit to here. It's changed a lot. We need to really, not just codify that change, but explain that change to everyone else, that we're not the same old Sterling Heights. You know, I've also really pushed for this, and we need to move forward even faster, reforming our planning and zoning, and really engage and codify ideas of new urbanism and walkable communities. You know, right now, I've seen twice now or 3 times now where developers have come through and we've laid these overlay districts on a lot of our city to develop better. And they'll say, oh, we're doing a mixed use. No, it's not. They're not. They are using our overlay to try to muscle in a building that doesn't fit. That's not right. That's not mixed use at all. But they're trying to use our own ideas against us. So I think we need to really go deep, not just into the overlay process, the massive planning process, but we need to codify and simplify a lot of our lower level codes, like setbacks. A lot of the, I ask about setbacks a lot because the number one thing that comes before the ZBA is setback requirements and things like that. And I can't get a straight answer why we require this much setback, why we require this, or why this is. We have all these things that are the rules and the law in Sterling Heights that I don't know why we do it. Other cities don't have setback requirements like us, and they're not falling apart. Berkeley doesn't have setback requirements like us, and they seem to do business. So I'm curious why we have them here in Sterling Heights, and if they're even effective or if they're harming our businesses. And to that end, even further, you know, there's all these concepts about what makes a community great, what makes a community walkable, what makes a community a community. And some things that we have, like snout houses or snout garages, where the garage is totally in front of the house, and the whole house is back, where you can't look out your front door and even see the neighborhood around you. That's what creates bad neighborhoods. That's what creates you not knowing your neighbors. When you're boxed into your house and you can't see your neighbor, you can't see down your block, that, you know, if we don't have a front porch or a front door or a way to engage with your neighbors, they're not going to engage with you. So we need to be codifying a lot of these things into our codes to better facilitate a neighborhood environment. Even further than that, you know, we need to talk about allowing garages and other spaces to be used for he sheds, or right now, my dad runs basically a wood shed out of our garage. But, you know, is that legal? Who knows? He works wood, and that's what he does in the garage. But why shouldn't we allow people to create spaces in their backyards to do this, especially with this idea that more and more people are staying home, that they're not going to go back to work. The Great Resignation is happening. So why shouldn't we facilitate them to use their property to the highest and best use, and maybe facilitate some different uses for property where the government doesn't have to get involved so closely? To go even further than that, I think we need to have an ordinance that updates how much of your front yard you can use for your driveway. There are whole houses in my neighborhood in southern Sterling Heights that are paving their entire front yard and parking. I counted one, they have 8 cars in their driveway. 8 cars, single family home. But that's the other thing, you know, we talk about single family homes, now Sterling Heights is a community of single family homes. But I think if anyone goes out and knocks on those doors, it's a single family, it's grandma, grandfather, mom and dad, the kids, and their kids, all living in the same home. So we should facilitate ways that let them, you know, is it granny flats, is it some other way to do it? Facilitate ways for them to do what they're already doing, but just in a more common sense direction, including, to me, I don't think an entire front yard should be concrete. It goes against our sustainability ideas, it goes against proper drainage, you know, all that pollution that's just going to go down the drain. I think we need to work on that. You know, I also think we need to talk about how wide our streets are. This sounds so silly, but we talk about speeding, and what enables speeding is wider streets, the free parking that we give residents, which is a great thing, but you're allowed to freely park your car in a street that the city owns, the city maintains, the city repairs. It's, you know, the cost of free parking, it really isn't free. It costs us a tremendous amount of the city to provide that parking for you. And, you know, in Detroit, where I grew up, the streets were a lot more narrow. You couldn't park 2 abreast and move a car the same way down the block. And there wasn't as much zipping along because people had to avoid cars, avoid obstacles. I think a lot of what happens is we draw designs for the fastest roadway, or the fastest anything, and we're shocked when people take advantage of the design that we give them. Drivers are gonna do what we give them designs for. To that end also, you know, I guess through the chair to Mr. Vanderpool, we were supposed to have a traffic study done on the Dodge Park corridor. Has that study come back yet, Mr. Vanderpool?
Mr. Vanderpool.
Thank you, Councilman Radke. Actually, the study included the Dodge Park corridor down to Stevenson, And also the Utica corridor from City Campus Center down past, toward the senior center here. It is not complete yet. We're working on it. The reason it's been delayed is because of COVID. Obviously, the school was not in session for quite some time. Of course, they have been this season, but I'll provide the results as soon as we get it. I know the traffic engineer is still working through that. We have a couple other areas that we're looking at, as you may recall, too. We're looking at with our consultant, and this is the same consultant that we used on the Ryan 15-mile road corridor. You know, we made many improvements to that intersection, but as you well know, we also looked at the Van Dyke and 15-mile road corridor, where we are putting in some traffic calming islands and looking at better lighting, improved lighting, more visible pedestrian crossings, and so on. Another area we're looking at is the Riverland crossing right at Riverland, so it'd just be right over the Clinton River there along our trailway system. So there's a number of areas that our consultant's looking at, but certainly the one you referenced is high on the list. We want to get it done. We have also made similar improvements after the studies to the Davis crossing on 17-mile, let's see, it would be east of Plumbrook. So, you know, better lit crossings, strobe light crossings, pedestrian crossings that are more visible. So these are the areas that we're trying to improve. I will say this, I share your concerns about traffic calming. It certainly is a worthy initiative in areas across the community. But at the same time, you know, we can't completely reconfigure our roadway system that is 99.99% built out. We can look at these areas, and built out over the last, 70 years. So it's mostly done now. We have to play the hand we're dealt, but I do agree with you. There are certain areas, and I know the council shares your concern, where we have to address these traffic issues, and we're working to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Vanderpool. You actually answered several of my questions. But I would go further. I would say other cities are addressing their built-out environment. I think Ferndale was built out just like we are, and they have gone to shrinking streets. They've gone to bump-out crossings for pedestrians. They've gone to bike lanes. Just because something is built now doesn't mean we can't fix it in the future. And more than that, if it's actively harming our residents, it's incumbent upon us to build out. I think throwing up our hands at the idea that something was built 40 years ago under different ideas that we know don't make sense, and just saying that's the way it was, and that's the way it's always will be, I think that that's a disservice to our residents. I think about this a lot in that 15-mile and Van Dyke area. Every time there's a crash there, every time there's a pedestrian fatality, and there has been at least 2 that I know of right there, I think about how we can do better and we can make a better crossing. And that's the other thing I was going to say. We should have more mid-block crossings. The idea that you have to walk a mile or you're jaywalking is insane. You know, cities are for people, they're for pedestrians, not just for drivers. And we facilitate humongous amounts of traffic from elsewhere, from not our community, to drive through our community. Then we penalize our residents for trying to use the community that we've built for them. It blows my mind, and we need to do something better to facilitate that.
Councilman Radke, if I could just interject a point. Again, I agree with many of your comments, but to be fair, let's not forget that we are implementing many of the initiatives you're talking about. When we spent months, and you were involved in it, on the North Van Dyke redesign, we talked about traffic calming there. We talked about narrowing the roadway. We've talked about median there. We've talked about bike lanes. When we talk about the lakeside area, and you've been very involved in that master plan, that whole redevelopment is going to be far more pedestrian friendly. And so, we are doing a lot of what you're suggesting, just to be fair, and we're spending a great deal of money on it. So it's not as though, we're completely ignoring these initiatives, that's for sure.
I didn't say you were, but I take the point. Even further, I'd also, I know we're talking about it, I'd also urge us to be hasty in our action to create a pathway in the south part of Moravian Park. I just walked out there the other day, and the existing catwalk that was there before still exists. And I know there's been some talk of creating a new pathway, but maybe it's incumbent upon the council just to use the powers that we have to take back the catwalk, which still exists. It's still there. I know that the two neighbors who would be impacted by that would not be happy with us, but I think the entire community that wants access to their park without having to trespass across other land, they might be enthused. I mean, those homes were built with that catwalk there. It wasn't like it's a new thing, and maybe we should take it back. I would urge that. Also, for I think it's the third year now, I'd like to talk about briefly the website and the emails that were supposed to be changed. I talked about this at strategic planning last year. I'm going to talk about it again this year. We were supposed to change our email address to something that makes sense to people, where I'm not trying to explain to them how to email me over the phone where they get confused, to a gov address that better reflects what our city is. I'd also say that we need to fully redo our website. I said this last year, and I'll say it again this year. It's not mobile friendly. It's not easy to use. It's not how people gather information, and it's frankly not updated. And hopefully we have more help over at the Community Relations Department to update the website, but maybe we need to have a simpler website. I think our website is honestly too complicated. There's too many things going on. And we need to do something so that residents can better interact with us, better find information. At least 3 times this year, a resident has contacted me because information on the website was either outdated or flat out wrong. And when we're presenting that to the public as our public face, it makes us look like we don't really know what's going on. And I think we need to really take heed with that and work on that. And finally, I will end with, I think it's time to update our master plan completely and make our zoning reflect our master plan. Because too often, both by conventional rezoning, by us trying to change things, the master plan and the zoning map do not make any sense. They conflict, actively conflict. And beyond that, I think we need to go back to the drawing board and really think about the city we want to have in the future. We spent a whole morning on 2045 on what kind of city we want to have, but we need to hire, and I'd urge us to hire the consultants that did the master plan for the North Van Dyke District. We need to talk about how the built environment reflects all those values that we're talking about. If we just continue on with the same master plan that was adopted before I was born, which is what it was. I mean, effectively, the master plan that we have today it was updated, but essentially it was written before I was born. And we continue on with that without really engaging with it, with deciding, do we want parks here? Do we want things here? Do we want this here? I mean, you're talking about a master plan that was built when I used to come up here when my grandparents lived here, 14 Mile and Van Dyke was a flower barn, and there was nothing there but fields. There was jug handle turns at 15 Mile and 16 Mile. There's a lot of changes that have happened just off the top of my head. We need to totally start from scratch on the master plan, decide what parts of our community need to do what they need to be, and that will inform us all going forward. Because if we're not updating our base documents, we're just always going to be trying to go back and fix it, rather than fixing it going forward so it's correct, and then we won't have to rely so much on the ZBA and the Planning Commission to straighten things out. We need to fix it. That was a lot of stuff, long-winded, but it's a meeting of possibilities and the things I want to see. I moved back to Sterling Heights. I lived in London. I was living in the United Kingdom when I moved back here to Sterling Heights. I've experienced great built environments. I walked around. I didn't own a car in London. We can do better here. We have a great city, and it really is tremendous, but we can do better, and part of that starts with us and the tone we set moving forward with how we want the city to be. That's all I have, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Vanderpool did have comments on an update on the Moravian Park.
Oh, wonderful.
Thank you. Councilman Radke, yes, a lot of the items you've brought up, we've shared updates with City Council, including yourself in one way, shape, or form, including the pathway at Moravian. The catwalk was deeded back. It was well before any of our time. It was probably 35 years ago or so. The Parks and Rec Director is working on an alternative plan, which we shared in the update a few weeks ago, using the DTE easement So we are indeed following up on that. We have a good plan there, so I encourage you to check out that update. With respect to the website, that is budgeted. The update is planned to be completed this fiscal year. We hope to get through it. The email addresses are part of that. I will say, you know, we do have a challenge of prioritizing all these initiatives. You've all brought up really good ideas. We now have to go through and decipher them, and we'll follow up with a written report to City Council. And then we're going to need further direction from City Council on many of these initiatives. It takes 4 of you to give us good, clear direction. So I encourage the City Council, and you brought up many, many great ideas. I encourage you to collaborate with your colleagues, to work closely with your colleagues, to get others on board with your ideas and initiatives so that we can discuss them further at the budget hearing process, so that we can allocate funding for the initiatives
Madam
and
Chair,
ideas
are you
and
lecturing
so
me,
on.
Mr. Vanderpool?
No, I'm
feel-
talking to the entire council. I'm talking to the entire council because it is important that we follow up on the next step from strategic planning. So I encourage you to look forward, everyone should look forward to the notes that we're going to provide, the summary of strategic planning, and then let's continue to work together to figure out how do we advance the ideas that are brought up here. Some of the ideas that are brought up at strategic planning really do take years to implement. They can't be done in months, 6 months, or a year. They literally take years. I wish we could do them even quicker, but we appreciate the feedback. The challenge for us as an administration and the challenge for City Council is which of your ideas, you know, are you going to prioritize collaboratively? Are you going to fund, and are we going to move forward in a timely fashion? So that's, I just bring that up.
I wonder because you didn't respond to anyone else in the same way.
Okay, Mr. Radke, I'd like my turn.
Well, I mean,
So, he was speaking with all of us.
I understand how our government works.
So I guess what I take from today is we have a plan, and that plan isn't a year out, it's many years out. And it's going to take some time to implement some of the things that were discussed today, if they're implemented at all. I guess when Mr. Yanez brought up the curbside recycling, I'm wondering if we could use some of our ARPA money to purchase those curbside recycling bins, because that is a huge cost for our residents if we engage in universal curbside recycling. And I guess through the chair to Mr. Vanderpool. Mr. Vanderpool, what year is our contract up with GFL?
I'm going to look over to our DPW director, but I think we're just 2.5 years away from this being expired. And we're going to begin negotiating very soon. And here's another example. I'm sorry, Mike, to interject a prelude here, but here's an example of where this item has been brought up at strategic planning, probably the last 2 or 3 strategic planning sessions. And the direction we received, the consensus that I believe we received at the last strategic planning, was to hold off on universal recycling because we're so close to the contract expiring. We're going to be sitting down developing the next RFP. By the way, it won't be a bid, and with an RFP, we don't have to take the lowest bidder. We'll be developing the next RFP for refuse collection services, and the idea is to work in universal recycling there. So there's an example of strategic planning is helpful, but sometimes it does take some time to get these initiatives implemented. I'm sorry, Mike.
Mr. Moore?
No, city manager answered the question really well. The only thing I can add is the contract does expire in 2024, so we will be gearing up pretty quick to start that process.
So we would really know before that contract. So I'm just wondering through the chair to Ms. Varney if that is a possibility.
Yeah, like as I mentioned in my presentation, because of the revenue loss calculation, we really can use the money for just about anything. You know, government services is pretty broad. I would say providing recycle bins is definitely a government service, so it definitely would be an allowable use of the money, in my opinion.
I would personally like that to be considered for part of that ARPA money, if, in fact, the contract that we go with next time has curbside recycling. Also, I've had more and more young, we'll get back to the youth in our community reaching out. I've had more and more young residents reach out to me about the possibility of tobacco-free parks. And I'm not sure, I don't have enough information on it. I'm not sure how it would be to enforce, but if we could get some more information to council on that, I would certainly appreciate it. And the trash days came up. Mr. Yanis, you had some good ideas today. So I'm wondering if...
One or two.
Today, just today. Just today.
So I'm wondering, we do Shine twice a year. Maybe we do Shine quarterly. And at least one of those days is designated just for trash pickup. Just a thought. And we can get those corporations that are big offenders in the litter involved in those Shine days. I know our homeowners that benefit from the Shine days really appreciate that. So maybe we do 3 home Shine days and 1 trash day a year, or 2 and 2. That's, you know, for a later discussion, but just something to consider. As far as our diverse fire force, you know, I think recruitment of any kind at this point has been a challenge for every single community. And I can't fault it being Sterling Heights as to why we don't have more diversity on that force. It's just the environment of the recruitment, and I'm hearing that more and more throughout the state and the country. You know, we're hearing the same thing. So I don't know why we're having an issue. Well, I kind of do know why. We all know why recruitment is an issue, but diversity recruitment, we've been trying this for years. And you can't force people to come and apply in your city, regardless of ethnicity, race, gender, whatever. You can't force people to come to your community. We can just promote ourselves, and I know our officers and our firefighters go out, and they do a phenomenal job of pushing to get people into our forces. And we are not alone in this boat. Every community is having recruitment problems as far as diversity go. I really don't have anything more than what my colleagues have already said. I'm glad to see that we have things in the books to look forward to and to plan. And I think with a little bit of patience, we'll see some of these things come to fruition. And that's all I can offer at this point. Mrs. Erico?
Briefly, thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I have a question, and we're talking about recycling and curbside recycling. Is the single stream that we use still the only type of curbside recycling that is offered, or are there other types of curbside recycling that we could investigate? And that would be that the person, or the resident actually has to sort out the cardboard, the plastic, the cans or whatever. I mean, and is that something we should look into? Through the chair to Mr. Moore, I guess.
Mr. Moore?
Sure. To my knowledge, most communities have accepted the single stream, which is where they throw everything in the container. But as the city manager had stated, because it's an RFP process, we can really entertain many different ideas. So we can throw those ideas out there and then let qualified vendors come back to us with their thoughts and their costs on that topic.
Okay, thank you. And then one more thing, you were bringing up recruitment. And And this is what I think the COVID has really, you know, the whole 2 years that we've been in this state of flux, is that in a 24-hour period, my daughter and I heard of 5 people in management positions that quit their job and didn't have another one. And part of it is people are reevaluating their lives, how much stress they want to put into it. Maybe if they were in a field that, you know, they did it because, you know, that was what they had to do in order to support their families. But people are rethinking their lifestyle. And I think that's part of even the recruitment process for anything that any job that we would even have in the organization. But just thought I'd throw that out there. Nothing further.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Madam Chair, briefly.
Mr. Radke?
Thank you. Just 2 quick things. I fully agree with the idea of maybe multi-stream. It's what we had when I lived in Germany and worked for the government. So I think it could work here too. Briefly, I think that culture drives everything else. And the idea that we throw up our hands sometimes and say, well, no one's applying, maybe we need to dig down deeper into the organization and decide why people aren't applying. Why, not just broadly why we can't recruit firefighters, but why aren't African-American firefighters applying? Because nothing's ever going to change if we just expect them to come to us. You know, we have to go meet them where they are and kind of bring them in. That's how we're going to change the culture and recruit more. And finally, to a point that Mr. Yanez brought up earlier, I point out that most of my colleagues, all of my colleagues, live on the east side because I am in favor of wards in Sterling Heights. I think that it'd be a better form of government than we have right now. At large, I do represent the entire city, and I appreciate the entire city, but you know, I so often find myself advocating just for the South End, where I live, where I spend most of my time, and where I know there are severe problems that might not get addressed by everyone. And if we had a colleague on the west side of the city or in the northwest quadrant, maybe they could bring to us their issues. Other large cities have wards. East Point has different issues. We can do things differently. Just because we're stuck to a paradigm that was written in 1968 does not mean that that paradigm needs to hold to the day. We've changed this paradigm multiple times. We are now all serving 4-year terms, which when I got here, I was told that's never going to change. No one's ever going to let us have 4-year terms. And we changed that within 4 years of me being here. So the idea that just because it has always been means it always must be, I think we need to break out of. That's all I have, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll close this portion of the meeting and open it up to communications from citizens. Are there any residents? Mr. Rajada?
Hi, Council, City Administration. I've got a few different things I wanted to talk about, and I'm really grateful I don't have a timer in front of me, but I'll still try to go through it quickly for you. First off, regarding a city recycling program, I would love to see that in the city. People who want to recycle in earnest right now have to drive across town in most cases or to other municipalities in order for them to recycle, oftentimes driving upwards of 30 minutes to do so. It is time intensive on them, it's onerous, it's not, for a lot of the average working person, it's just not a reasonable expectation at this time, and it's something that we need to change, because a lot of folks, they do appreciate the value in recycling. They want to do it, it's just trying to find the time to do it, and the best way for us to bring the citizenry into a recycling program is to make it more readily accessible to them. Put it at their curbside. As far as single stream or other stream, I don't really care which you do. I just want to see something. I would love to have, an affordable recycling program that's not having me, shell out. I think it's what, 60, 80 bucks for a bin right now. I don't remember the number offhand. Forgive me.
58, 57.
57. Okay, sorry. I rounded there. We're going to go with that. As far as business recycling, I'd love to have that be a mandate in the city. I think that that's a really constructive and forward-thinking initiative for us to have. And as far as the city itself recycling, please do it. I'd love that. Make my day. Next topic, regarding the Youth Advisory Board, One thing I haven't heard from you guys that I would genuinely love, I'm not a youth anymore, but I have, family who is and still involved in organizations. Anyway, I would love to see you correspond with high school journalism programs. I went through the Stevenson High School's Vanguard. I was their editor-in-chief back in 2012. One thing that we tried to initiate back then and didn't really meet with much success is trying to find ways to have a liaison with government or community boards. And so what I'd love for you guys to do is to reach out to the different publications for the Utica Community School District, the Warren County School District for the schools within the bounds of Sterling Heights, and talk to the journalism teachers there, see what, I can tell you most of them will be interested in having, a ready contact in city government for them to have a student on the beat and say, what's new in the local area. It gets the information out there as to what's going on in local government to them, and I really think that it's a valuable opportunity that can be taken advantage of. Next, with regards to zoning, I've got two things I'd like to raise. One is I'd like to see additional low-income housing opportunities in the city. As we all know, housing prices are higher than ever, and the city's projected in the future to have an ever-growing proportion of elderly and retired persons within the city bounds. Younger people are being priced out of Sterling Heights, and that's something I am sure the city is acutely aware of already. And I just would love to be able to have myself and my friends afford to have our own places within town. It'd be, awesome. Finally, I would also like to see the city to consider offering alternative use waivers, or I'm not sure what the exact legalese term for this would be, for their yard for sustainability purposes. Specifically, if somebody wants to have a Michigan native wildflower conservancy as their front lawn, I would love to see something like that as an option. I went to school in Albion, and there was this one professor's house on the outskirts of campus, and they had some signage from the state on there that it was a wildflower preserve for this little front lawn that was smaller than half of this semicircle here, but they had this signage indicating that it was a preserve, and I'm assuming it was official. It looked official, had a state emblem on it. I'd love to see the city have some sort of wildflower preserve option or conservancy waiver. I'd like to see the city also be okay with having clover lawns. We talk about the expense of mowing, and one thing that doesn't grow super high is a clover lawn. It stays low to the ground. It's still green, and I think that that's an option that we can explore. And then also, if somebody wants to have a front or expansive backyard fruit and vegetable garden, I think that having that as an option for the public as well would be something I'd like to see. Thank you again so much for your time. I appreciate being able to speak.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Nelson?
Thank you, Chairwoman. I was going to come up here and ask that you suspend the council rules because it says down here, you have rules and procedures that we can't talk on agenda items. But I thank you for allowing us to speak on this particular meeting. I wasn't able to make it this morning, but most of my questions are on the ARPA that you discussed earlier in the day. I'm going to keep going on this. I've brought it up to the council before, and I was told that we have certain way to do things, and those aren't getting done. But the biggest thing that I heard out of everybody in their reports this evening is we need to listen to the people more. I know, Mr. Vanderpool, you tell me every time that we put out every way we can to get the information out to the people. The website is a disaster, and it shouldn't take 6 months, shouldn't take a year in order to get it people-friendly, okay? We provide too much information and not enough looking at what it is that is on that agenda and what's being discussed. I need to bring up the item about unpaved streets in Sterling Heights. I've talked to most of you about that tonight. The three that come to my have come to my attention in the last 6 months have been Gardner East, Nathan, and Dawn. The big thing that I received, or the answer that I received about our unpaved streets, is they were caught in between us being a township and turning into a city. That's why they were never paved. They don't have sidewalks. It has not been developed. And these are streets right off 17 Mile is Nathan and 17 and Mound. All these people that told me that they want their streets paved, they just don't want to be assessed for it. There's an ideal opportunity to take all of these streets that are not paved and use our ARPA and look to put at least some of our ARPA funds to get these things paved. Gardner East is definitely wanted to have that happen. Some of the other ones wanted it to happen, but they don't want to pay the special assessment cost. Dawn, I understand that's an issue. Dawn is off of Van Dyke, between Van Dyke and Utica Road, and the people wanted that to be cul-de-sac. Listen to the people. The people that live there want a cul-de-sac. Seven people, 1 minute? Oh, I didn't know we were timing. 7 people basically shouldn't be making those kind of decisions, and we need to try to find another way for us to get the people. Your presentations about all the neat things we want to do in the future was excellent. You guys bent over backwards to make sure that everybody could come in, ask questions, look to see what the city wants to do, but they don't do it. So we give people all the ways that they can get involved in our city, but they don't want to do it. That's not acceptable, because if they don't want to do it, then we leave all of our decisions up to the 7 that are up here. Agreed? Agreed. The sidewalks and street trees, I brought this up before. We, as homeowners, own to 1 foot of the sidewalk, 1 foot inside the sidewalk. And then the assessment, or that's what I'm looking for. The rest of us is city. We require people to put street trees in. We also require the utilities to put right where the street trees are going. We have the utilities do that. It's causing a problem. I heard earlier this morning talking about our utilities, about our infrastructure. I know Mr. Moore's, sees that more than he wants to see it, but our infrastructure is getting old. It needs to be repaired. We need to start spending our money instead of trying to look like and put in pass and put in this and put in that. We need to spend more time on our infrastructure and getting it back up to where it needs to be.
Mr. Nelson?
Yes,
Can I ask you to
okay.
wrap up?
It's pretty much. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, I'll close communications from citizens. Time for reports from city administration and city council. Mr. Vanderpool, anything?
Nothing further.
Mr. Koszybski?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Reports from city council. Anyone? Seeing none, I'm sorry. Mr. Yanez.
I just wanted to point out in regards to the ARPA money for recyclable containers, the state of Michigan through Eagle does have grants to allow us to buy those as well, so we can also supplement those.
Perfect.
And Mr. Moore is very familiar with those grants.
Very good. Anyone else? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion, any opposed?
No.
This meeting is adjourned.